Most people open up Lovable, they type something vague like, make me a website, and watch it generate, and then spend the next hour trying to figure out why it doesn't match what they had in mind. And honestly, that's not a Lovable problem, it's a setup problem. Because Lovable is not just an app builder, it's a full stack development system with AI integration, a cloud backend, a real authentication, and professional deployment baked right in. And by the time that you and I are done here, you're gonna know exactly how to drive this thing, not just the basics, but the features that 99% of users walk right past. So to make this practical, we're going to build something together throughout this whole video: an expense tracker and a small e-commerce app. Nothing too complicated, but complex enough to actually show you every feature Lovable has. And by building alongside with me, you're going to see exactly how each decision that you make at the start affects what you can do later on. So stick around, because the later parts get really good. And for people who actually want to take AI to the next level, check out the link in the description for a special offer. All right, now let's go ahead and get right into it. Most people just jump straight into building without really paying attention to the small things in the interface. And ironically, those are the exact things that make the biggest difference early on. It's not about doing anything complex, not yet. It's more about setting yourself up in a way that just makes everything smoother as you go. And a lot of that starts right here in the input box. So if you look at the input box here, there's more going on than just typing. There's a microphone button, and this is one of those features that's surprisingly useful once you actually start using it. You can just speak your prompts instead of typing them. All you gotta do is just enable it by allowing microphone access when prompted. So what makes this helpful isn't just the speed. When you speak, you naturally explain things more clearly and with more detail. You're less likely to leave things out compared to typing short or rushed prompts. It also transcribes everything for you in real time, and it's actually quite pretty accurate. So if you tend to think faster than you type, then this makes a noticeable difference. So right next to that, you also have the option to upload screenshots or images, and this can save you a lot of time if you already have a sort of visual idea of what you want. Instead of describing everything from scratch, you can just, show it off. And that could be a wireframe, a screenshot from a tool like Figma, or even a quick sketch. You can drag and drop files, you can upload them directly, or even paste a screenshot using Ctrl-V. And once it is there, Lovable can use that as a reference when building your app, which usually leads to more accurate results. There's also an option to connect to a Supabase organization, and this can be useful indeed if you're planning to work with databases, since Supabase handles things like storage and backend data. And you don't need to set it up right away. No, it's okay. But it is good to know it is available as you start building more complex features. So at some point, you will notice that the results that you get from AI can feel a bit inconsistent. Sometimes it does exactly what you want, and there are other times it just feels like completely off. And most of that comes down to how you are prompting it. So before we get into more advanced strategies, I'm going to show you the simple ways that you can improve your prompting right away, starting with how you actually input them. Now, if you do look closely here, this isn't just a simple text field. There's a microphone button, and this is one of those features that people just completely overlook, but it's actually really useful. Instead of typing everything out, you can just speak your prompt, and you'll need to enable it first. Just allow microphone access when prompted. But once it is on, you can start talking naturally. And here's why this matters. When you speak, you tend to explain things more clearly. You don't overthink wording as much, and you're just less likely to leave out important details. And the system just transcribes everything for you in real time, and it's surprisingly accurate. So if you are someone who thinks faster than you type, or you just want to move quicker, then this is an easy win that makes your prompts instantly better. And right next to that, you also have the option to upload screenshots or images. And this is another feature that saves a lot of time, especially if you already have a rough idea of what you want. So instead of trying to describe a layout from scratch, you can just show it off. And that could be, say, a wireframe, a screenshot from a tool like Figma, or even something as simple as a quick sketch. Yeah, a sketch. You can drag and drop files directly, you can upload them manually, or even paste just a screenshot using Ctrl-V. And once it is in, the AI can just use that as a reference to build your app. It's really a much faster way to communicate your your vision compared to just typing everything out, and it usually leads to more accurate results as well. There's also an option to connect to Supabase right here from the start, and this is more relevant if you know you're going to be working with databases, since Supabase handles things like storage and authentication and backend data. And you don't have to set this up immediately, not right now, but it is good to know that it is there, especially if you are planning to build something that goes beyond just a simple front-end app. So once the first version of your app is generated, this is where you start refining it. You'll naturally begin clicking around, testing different parts, and noticing what's missing or not working yet. And things like change plans, add subscription, or the settings page might not do anything at first, and that is expected. So just make sure to keep track of what you want to improve upon. It doesn't need to be complicated. Just jot down your ideas as you go along, like building out the settings tab or adding a proper transactions page. And that way, you're not trying to fix everything at once or relying on memory. And when you are ready to start refining things, you can just go back to Gemini and use it to structure your next prompt. All you gotta do is just send it a screenshot of what Lovable generated, include your list of changes, and then let it turn that into something more precise. And then you take that prompt and then you just bring it back into Lovable. And that's just the back and forth here. The testing, the listing, the refining is what gradually turns the app into something more complete instead of trying to get everything perfect in one go. Since we are going to be building and testing quite a lot, I already upgraded to the Pro plan. It's $25 and it gives you 100 credits that renew every month. And that just gives you enough room to actually go through everything properly without worrying about running out mid-demo. And at some point, something's just not gonna work the way that you expect. And the instinct is usually to just keep prompting until it fixes itself. And that's where a lot of credits get wasted, so don't do that. A better approach is a switch to plan mode before anything gets executed at all. Instead of immediately applying changes, Lovable will first just break down what it's about to do and then show you the plan. Once that plan is generated, just take a moment to review it. This step makes sure that you and the AI are aligned on what's actually going to change, especially if you're not coming from a technical background at all. It does give you a clear picture of what's about to happen before anything is modified. It's a simple step here, but it does save you from a lot of unnecessary back and forth later. So after clicking approve, Lovable starts executing the plan and rebuilding the parts of your app that need updating. And from there, you can just go back into the app and then actually test what changed. And this is where you click around and you verify everything. So check if pages work properly, like switching between monthly, weekly, or daily views, and try adding real data. Input transactions, select category, set dates, and see if everything behaves the way that you expect it to. And as you go through this, you will start seeing more complete features come together. Things like subscription toggles and settings updates and email reminders or even weekly summaries. You can also export your data into a usable format, which makes the app feel a lot more real. So the dashboard here becomes more interactive too. You can click into different sections like income or expenses, and then also see more detailed views with animation. And if something just does not work properly, it's okay, just note it down. Whether it's a missing feature or something that feels off, you can include it in your next prompt and then refine it further. And that's really the goal here, just getting to a point where it's not just something that looks good, but really it's something you can actually use to track, manage, and interact with your data. So the thing is, at the very beginning, it is easy to just add things as you go, but over time, it becomes harder to keep track of what's connected, what's working, and what might break when you make changes. So having a clearer workflow makes a big difference here, especially if you're planning to keep building and improving your app instead of just starting over each time. So instead of just adding things as you go, I'm gonna walk you through a proper setup from the start so everything stays structured as you build. So once you've got your agent set up, the next step is connecting it to GitHub. To do that, you can just click connect and it'll prompt you to sync the project with your GitHub account. A pop-up will show up asking to transfer the project. Just go ahead and confirm that. There's a line there that's easy to skip, but it's actually important. Your project will now live inside of GitHub. And what that means is every change that you make from this point forward is tracked and stored in a repository. It's a good thing. So instead of everything staying inside of Lovable, you now have a full copy of your project in GitHub. And if you click view and open it up, you'll see all your files there, your actual code, the structure, everything. You can edit it directly in GitHub if you want. You can explore the files or manage versions from there. And we're not gonna go too deep into GitHub here. We're talking about Lovable, but just understand that your project is no longer just inside the builder. It's now a proper repository you can access pretty much anytime. So one feature that will save us a lot of headaches later on is the built-in version history. Now, this runs separately from GitHub and is available even if you have never connected your project before. So every time that Lovable makes a change, it automatically saves a version of your app in the background. And as you work, you'll start to see those versions stack up over time. So for example, you might notice a point where major changes happen within a certain time frame, and you can click into any of those versions and explore exactly what your app looked like at that moment in time. And from there, you have a few options. You can bookmark a version to keep it saved at the top. Now, this is useful if you've reached a point where you kind of just might want to return to later. You can also preview it in a new tab to see how the app behaved before, like when, certain features weren't interactive yet, or when parts of the UI were still incomplete. Now, if you want to go deeper, you can also view the code changes, and you'll see additions marked clearly and anything removed highlighted as well. It is very similar to how version tracking works in GitHub, but built directly into Lovable. Now, the main idea here is simple. You're not stuck with your latest version. You're not. You have a full history of your entire progress, and you can always go back and review and restore any point along the way. Now, the good thing about having version history is that you're never ever locked into your own current state. You can always go back to an earlier version if something breaks or just doesn't turn out the way that you expected it to. For example, you can select a specific version, let's say the one from 1037 here, and then bookmark it so it's easy to find later. You can also bookmark your latest version just to keep both points saved. Then from there, all you have to do is click revert to version, and your project will roll back to exactly how it looked at that time. And once you do that, the newer versions don't disappear permanently. They are just kind of hidden for the moment. And you can always bring them back and switch to a more recent version again, like the one where the multi-page UI was added. So you can move back and forth between versions pretty easily, and it's not permanent, it's not risky. You're just really navigating through different points in your project's timeline. Now, at some point, you're gonna notice something a little bit off. You're adding data, you're clicking through features, everything looks like it's working, but the moment that you refresh, it's all gone. Nothing's actually being saved. And that's because everything that we've built so far is only running on the front end. There is no database behind it yet, no user accounts, no real storage. It's more just like a working preview than a complete app. And what's missing here is the back end. You can access Lovable Cloud from the top or through the three dots here under Cloud. And once you enable it, your app starts getting all the places it was missing: database, authentication, storage, and backend logic. So you can even connect an LLM directly into your app from here on out. From this point on, what you're building isn't just something that you can click through and it's all pretty. It actually saves your data now and behaves like a real application. So getting this set up is pretty straightforward. You just enable Cloud and it gets added into your chat interface. And then from there, Lovable will just suggest built-in tools like the database and LLMs. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, though, is the project region. You'll be asked to choose something like Europe or Asia Pacific, and once that's set, you cannot change it later. So just pick the one that makes sense for you before continuing. And after clicking Allow, you'll be able to access the Cloud section. And this is where you can see things like your AI usage, emails, and your database. You'll also find user management and settings here, though those will make more sense once your app is live. And if you prefer, you can also connect external services like Supabase instead of using the built-in system. But for now, the default setup is just more than enough to get started. So now that the backend is in place, the next step is actually using it. To do that, we need to add features like login and proper data handling. I use Gemini again to help generate a refined prompt for things like authentication and security settings. Before running it, I switched to plan mode. I reviewed the steps and then approved it. And once that's done, everything just kind of gets all wired together: the database, the authentication, and the transaction system. And from there, you can just test it like a real app. Start by signing up with a name, an email, and a password. Then verify your account. And after that, maybe try adding data, input a transaction, maybe a salary, a subscription, or an expense, and then just see how it behaves. You can also set up different accounts like cash and bank or credit. and create budgets for categories like food or entertainment. And say, for instance, if you set a budget for entertainment, you'll start to see your subscriptions being tracked against it. And at this point, the app just starts to feel more complete. Things like dark mode, date formats, notifications, and even small features like a donate button all just start coming together. And most importantly here, the data just stays there. So once everything is working, you can start layering in AI. So let's go back to Gemini again to brainstorm ideas and then ask it to turn one of those ideas into a proper prompt for Lovable. So after that, let's switch to plan mode again, review the steps and approve it. Give it a bit of time to run. You'll notice that your previous data is still there right now since everything is being stored properly. So from there, you can test the AI directly. For example, we'll type something like spent $300 on a bicycle today with my cash. And as soon as you run that, it just gets added into your transactions. You can check the details, it assigns the correct amount, it categorizes properly and updates everything automatically. And if you've set a budget, then you'll also see that reflected right away. And as you test, you might notice just some small changes that still need fixing, maybe like a button that doesn't respond or a setting that doesn't apply. Just keep a mental or written list and then include those things in your next prompt. And one of the best parts here is how natural it feels. We are just describing what happened here and the system just handles the rest. And as you start using AI a little bit more, make sure to keep an eye out on your usage, because inside the cloud section, there's an AI tab here where you can see all the requests being made. And this will be very important as your app grows, especially if you're thinking about cost and scaling later on. You'll also find a secret section here, and this is where you can safely store API keys, like if you want to use OpenAI or another external service instead of the default setup. It's a small detail, but it keeps everything just organized and secure as your app becomes more advanced. So once you get comfortable with just the basics, there are a few features that most people never ever touch. Not because they're hard to use, but because they're just easy to overlook. And these are usually the ones that make your workflow faster, cleaner, and a lot more flexible once you actually start using them. There's a part of Lovable that most people completely ignore, especially if they don't come from a technical background, and that's the code itself. You can access it by clicking code, and what you'll see there is everything your app is actually built on. And this isn't some hidden system running behind the scenes, it's real code. React components, logic, file structure, all laid out in a way that's readable and organized. And this matters more than what you might think, because once your project is synced with GitHub, this is the exact same code that lives there. So if you're working with a developer, they're not dealing with a blank box. They can just open it, they can read it, and then just really understand exactly what's going on. If you're comfortable making small changes, you can actually edit the code directly without going through prompts. And this is especially useful for quick fixes like adjusting a value or changing a small piece of logic, where writing a full prompt would just slow you down. And you also have the option here to download specific files if you want to, like take the code elsewhere or work on it outside of Lovable. Another useful feature here is the ability to reference a specific directory. If you tell Lovable to work on a certain folder, it will only focus its changes there on that folder instead of affecting the entire project. Now, this is helpful when you're working on something a little bit more specific, like a back-end setup or a particular integration. There's also a much simpler way to make quick changes, and that's through visual editing. On the left side, you can switch into a mode where you just kind of click directly on elements and then edit them in place. So if you want to change a heading, you can go ahead and click that and then type right away. No prompts, no back and forth, it's just direct edits. You can also adjust things like colors and font sizes, of course, and styles from there. It's a small feature, but it does save us a lot of time, especially for minor tweaks. Instead of asking the AI to rewrite something, you can just fix it yourself in a few seconds. If you're working with other people, you don't have to build everything alone. Lovable lets you invite collaborators directly into your project so you can work alongside you. And you can do this by clicking share and sending them an invite link. And once they're in, they can prompt and edit and make changes just like you. Everything happens in the same project in real time. You also have the option to share a preview link if you just want to show off your work without giving full access to anyone in it. And if needed, you can manage permissions depending on your plan, especially if you just want to control who can edit and who can only view. All right, so before you publish anything, this is one step you do not want to skip, because it's easy to get excited once everything is working and just push it live. But security is one of those things that's just better handled up front than later. Lovable has a built-in security scan that runs a series of checks across your app. And once you start it, it just goes through different layers automatically. So for example, it checks low-level security to make sure users can only access their own data. Without that, someone with the right link could just potentially see everything in your database. It also looks at your database structure through a schema check, scans your dependencies for known vulnerabilities, and then checks if any API keys were accidentally exposed in your front-end code. Now, these are all things that are easy to miss if you're not actively looking for them. And once the scan does finish, it just lists out any issues it finds. And you might see things like missing authentication for AI features, exposed files, or certain functions returning errors. Instead of figuring out how to fix everything manually, you can just describe the issue in the chat, and then Lovable will handle all of it for us. There's also a try to fix all option, which will attempt to receive most of these automatically, and it won't catch everything perfectly, but it does handle a good portion of common issues. So let's say you're building something more sensitive, like anything involving payments or personal data. It's still worth having a proper security review done. But for most projects, getting through this scan pulls you in a solid position. Because once everything is resolved, just run the scan again to double check and then click update. And from there, your app is ready to be published, and it will be available under a lovable.app domain by default. So if this is something that you actually want to put out into the world as a real product, then at some point you are going to want your own domain on it. The default Lovable URL is fine while you're testing, but once it starts feeling like something you'd actually share publicly, then I think having your own domain makes it feel much more polished and professional. So to go ahead and set that up, just go here to the top left, open settings, then head to domains. And from there, you can either connect a domain you already own from another provider, or you can just buy a new one directly through INOs. And you just type in the domain name you want and then go through the usual setup from there. There's also one small detail that a lot of people forget to change, because by default, Lovable adds a little built with Lovable badge on the bottom of public apps. So for a more personal project, well, that's completely fine. But if this is something you're selling or showcasing, presenting as your own product, you'll probably want to remove that. And to do that, just go back into Lovable, open project settings, and then turn off the option to hide the Lovable badge. And then once that updates, everything else on that page will refresh and it should disappear from the bottom right. After that, you're in a good place to publish. And your custom domain is connected, the branding is clear, and the app is ready to go live. So once you start connecting your app to external services, there are two parts that you'll likely keep coming back to: secrets and edge functions. And understanding how these two work together make a big difference. The secrets panel is where your API keys go. You'll find it under the cloud section. Instead of pasting keys directly into the chat, which can be risky, Lovable just keeps them stored securely in one place. It even catches it if you accidentally paste a key into a prompt and then redirects it into the secrets tab. It's a small detail, yes, but it does prevent a lot of common mistakes. And then you have edge functions, and this is where the logic runs when your app needs to connect to something external. And the key thing here is that these functions run on the same server, not in the browser, so your API keys stay protected. A simple example is adding something like, say, live weather data. You can just save your API key in the secrets panel, then describe what you want, like pulling weather data into your dashboard. And then Lovable handles the connection, sets up the function, and then just links it to your app. After that, you'll start seeing the data show up directly in your interface. And once you understand the pattern, it just applies to everything else. Payments, messaging, maps, it all works the same way. So secrets store your credentials, edge functions handle the logic, and Lovable connects it to your UI. After setting this up, it's worth checking the logs. This gives you a real-time view of what's running and what might be failing. And if something breaks, the error shows up there too. You can copy it, you can paste it into the chat, and then ask Lovable to fix it. And that alone saves a lot of time because you don't need to fully understand what went wrong. You just use the feedback loop and keep things moving. At some point, you have to think beyond just getting the app to work for yourself. You have to think about how this would hold up if other people were using it. Different users, different plans, and different levels of access. So now let's push this just a little bit further and then turn this into something closer to an actual product. Now, what we're setting up here is a basic version of user tiers, different plans for different types of users. I used Gemini to help structure this, and from there, we started building things like infrastructure profile, a pricing page, and multiple subscription tiers. And from here, I switched to plan mode, and then I let Lovable outline what needed to be done. And it generated a full plan. Things like a profile dropdown, a pricing page with multiple tiers, Stripe checkout integration, subscription tracking, and even feature gating for AI access. Now, I'm not going to go through every technical detail here. The important part is understanding the flow, because once the plan looks good, I just approve it and then let Lovable handle the setup. And at one point, it asked me for a Stripe API key, which we already added through the secret section. So after that, everything connects together automatically. Once it is finished, you can see all the pieces in one place. There's now a profile dropdown, a working upgrade page, Stripe integration, and a customer portal. And inside the settings here, you can see the current plan, options to upgrade, and even a donation section. And if you go into the upgrade page, you can choose a plan and click upgrade now. That takes you into the Stripe checkout flow. Just make sure pop-ups are enabled so it opens properly. And then from there, it behaves exactly like a normal checkout experience would. And since this is in test mode, you'll see options like pay with link, but the flow itself is fully working, and that's great. Now, behind the scenes, Lovable has already handled most of the setup. The Stripe key is stored in secrets, and the necessary edge functions are created automatically. And if anything doesn't work as expected, you can just always check the logs and use the chat to troubleshoot. And that same loop, check, prompt, refine still applies right here. Once people start using your app, you're probably gonna want to know what's actually happening inside of it. Not just whether it works, but how it's being used. And that's where the analytics dashboard comes in. Inside Lovable, you can check things like how many visitors you're getting, how many pages they view, how long they stay, and even how often they leave. It's a simple set of metrics, but it does give us a much more clear sense of what's going on. Instead of guessing, you can just actually see how people interact with your app all directly from the dashboard. But one thing that catches a lot of people off guard is how different the app looks once it's opened on a phone. And it might look perfect on desktop, but the moment you switch to mobile, things just start breaking. Text doesn't fit, buttons are hard to click, and some parts just don't work at all. And you can check this directly inside of Lovable by switching to different screen views like tablet or mobile. And that gives you a quick way to see how your app actually looks across different devices. And as you go through it, please do pay attention to anything that feels off. Maybe the layout doesn't adjust properly, or certain elements don't respond the way they should. And in those cases, you can just tell Lovable to fix the responsiveness and be specific about what needs to change. It's also worth clicking through different pages here, and not just the main screen either. Sometimes you'll find small issues like missing navigation or buttons that just don't lead anywhere. And that only shows up on mobile. From there, you can go ahead and fix it the same way that you've been doing everything else. Just prompt and test and then refine. And you can use tools like Gemini to help structure your prompts, or switch to plan mode if the changes are more complex. Now, the goal is simple here. Just make sure the app works just as smoothly on a phone as it does on desktop. After getting everything working across devices, you can now take it a step further and make your app feel even more like a real product. So right now, your app runs in a browser, but with a progressive web app, you can make it installable so people can add it to their home screen on their smartphones or their desktop, and then open it like a normal app. To do that, I use Gemini again to generate a prompt that turns this into a PWA. I didn't need to manually figure out all the steps. I just kind of asked it to create the prompt, then brought that back into Lovable. And before running it, I switched to plan mode. I reviewed the changes and I approved those changes. And once it's set up, you'll start to see the difference right away, because on your phone, you'll get an option to add to home screen. And after installing it, then yeah, the app gets its own icon and opens without the browser, similar to how a native app might work. And another useful part is that certain features can still work offline, especially anything that's already been loaded. So for example, like an expense tracker that's actually practical, people can still check their data even without an internet connection. You'll also see prompts on the desktop to install it there as well. Once installed, it opens as its own window separate from the browser and behaves just like a standalone app. So by now, you've seen how all the pieces just kind of fit together. And once you understand the flow, you can apply the same process to pretty much any app you want to build. It starts with keeping things simple at the beginning. So don't try to define everything all at once. Just focus on the core idea and use tools like the microphone or image uploads to communicate clearly, and then let the first version take shape before refining it. And as you start building on top of that, things will break or just feel incomplete, and that's okay. And that's where plan mode comes in, because instead of guessing, you can just review the plan first, make sure it aligns with what you actually want, and then let it run. And keeping track of what needs to be added or fixed, whether mentally or with a quick list, just makes this process a lot smoother. You can also use tools like Gemini to refine your prompts even further so you're not wasting credits. Now, once the app starts working the way that you expect, you just move into the cloud side of things, and that's where everything becomes real. Your database, users, AI features, and integrations. It's really where you manage logs and secrets and anything running in the background. So before putting anything live, you run a security scan, fix what comes up, update the app, and then publish. And from there, you can connect your own domain and clean up things like branding so it feels like a finished product. And even after that, the process doesn't really stop. You just keep testing and adjusting and improving and repeating that all over again. Small changes, quick fixes, checking logs when something breaks. It's really all part of keeping the app working the way that you want it to. And that's the full workflow. Every feature you've seen fits somewhere into that process. And once you recognize which stage that you're in, it just becomes a lot easier to know what to do next. And if you made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. A lot of users never even get past the first version. So at this point, the best thing that you can do is build something and see how far you can take it. And that's it. That is the full workflow. Everything, every feature that you've seen fits somewhere into that process. Once you recognize which stage you're in, it does become a lot easier to know, well, what do I do next? And if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. A lot of users never get past the first version. So at this point, the best thing you can do is build something and see how far you can take it. All right, so thanks for watching and investing your time in me today. I'll go ahead and see you at the next one.